All right, type one in the comments if you can hear me now. Should have just fixed something. So go ahead and let me know in the chat if you can hear me. While I do that, while you guys do that, I'm going to get some things set up here. All right, type one in the comments if you can hear me now. Should have just fixed something. So let me know in the chat if you can hear me. While I do that, while you guys do that, I'm going to get some things set up here. All right, looks like it's working. So I'm just going to go over the SPC first, and we're going to kind of look at the analysis. And then what we'll do is just kind of look at the radar for the rest of the night and pick out some storms. Probably going to be live for about a half hour or so. Been setting up the studio, so lots of random technical difficulties, but it's a good test run for the next storm system in next week or so. So we'll be doing more live streams in the future. But right now, we got a really powerful low pressure system out here sitting over Iowa. And we'll change the color here. All right, so I just bought a new computer too. So lots of new things, trying to figure things out here. What we're looking at right now is the supercell composite. There's a nice powerful low pressure system hanging around Iowa, and you can see all this moisture getting wrapped around this thing. There's actually a second wave of storms right here. And the issue was there was a lot of messy storms out here earlier in the day. This kind of like squandered the environment in Western Illinois because it was going to be a lot crazier. So the tornado threat wasn't as high. But if you look at the SPC, I was talking about how there'd be yesterday a threat in Iowa. And some of our biggest tornadoes have been in Iowa today. So you can see the storm reports. And we'll click that real quick. And you can see there's a few storm reports out in Iowa. I said there's going to be a couple back there in the occlusion, and there was. There was a couple of tornadoes that did some damage in western Iowa, but some storms really weren't really as strong as expected, especially in central and southern Illinois. So let's go check those out right now. All right, so type type where you're from in the comments. Type a couple questions. We'll kind of answer them for the rest of the night. But this is a new software I'm using, WSV3. There's gonna be a lot of new things I'm gonna be adding to this in the future that I've been working on. You'll see shortly, but you can see the fronts here. There's a nice cold front here sitting out in parts of Missouri, Iowa, Illinois. This is like what's really responsible for all of this activity. Now, the jet stream is going crazy above here, and it's doing is it's blowing storms off the front. So when you get storms that form on the cold front, usually the cold air kind of undercuts the storms, but they're getting blown off the front. So you can see the storms are way out here. And that's why they're severe, pretty strong. They're out in the warm sector. So try to get rid of that real quick. But there really isn't any tornado warnings right now. There were a couple earlier, but we'll go check down in Kentucky, see what's going on down there. That was an area that's really overperformed. Let's see. Whoops. Try to get rid of that. Someone said, is Ohio going to be okay? Yeah, Ohio looks to just be mostly just an isolated wind threat after dark. These storms will start to die out later in the evening, especially out here. But you can see the main storms here are actually in Tennessee, Kentucky. Got one actually down here in Jackson, way north of Jacksonville, but all the way down into Mississippi. So this area has actually been doing much better in a bad way. But really, overall, the threat right now is, for the most part, let's see. Whoops, that's actually not even showing for some reason. There we go. Try that out again. There we go. So you can see that the main threat here is down in Tennessee, Kentucky, all the way into Indiana. And really, this environment out here in northern Illinois got kind of squashed with storms earlier. Instability wasn't as good. It was slower moving, but these storms are kind of dying out. You can see that these right here are generally severe storms and no tornado warnings. There was a storm up here that probably produced a tornado southwest of Rockford, but you can see it's starting to die out up here. And let's see if I can turn on the radar here, or the high res ordeal. And this is a brand new software, so I'm actually learning about this right now. We'll turn on the reflectivity for this region. And yeah, there's a little bit of a hook there. You can see that hook in that area. So this is the area that I'm talking about, is that sometimes you get a little wrapping. And this could cycle. These two things could merge and you could get some more hooking in there. And that's where you'd get your tornado. It was kind of close to Chicago, but luckily this thing has really died out for the most part. So we'll turn off the drawing tool. Whoops. But yeah, guys, there's some big hail in that one. For some reason I cannot get this drawing tool off. But yeah, there's a severe storm warning kind of out just northwest of McChesney Park. For some reason, this drawing tool is actually freezing up, so I don't know what's going on with that. I'm going to quit out of this and restart it. So what we're going to do for the meantime is look at this 3D radar. This is kind of a cool app I found. This is called Weather Lab, and you can see storms in the 3D mode here. And this is measuring the heights of the storm systems. So we can actually click on Louisville here. This is kind of where the main show is. And look at that. You can see it's a lot more widespread down there. But look what's missing. Near Cincinnati, and people are wondering how Ohio is going to be. Ohio shouldn't be too bad with this type of system. These storms, they're not really getting high up in the atmosphere. When you get storms that go really high up, like this one right here, usually means that they're stronger updrafts, and you just do not see that farther to the north. So really, the storms to the north near Cincinnati, Ohio, it's mostly just going to be a wind threat. Hail is going to be a little bit lower than usual because it's kind of a messy mode. Hail is better in supercells, like the storm down here. So this storm down here, this is near Hodgenville, Bardstown. That area could be impacted by some pretty decent sized hail here soon. And this is the severe warning that's popping up. You got 60-mile-an-hour winds, nickel-size hail down there. So that area has really got some pretty good severe weather. Let's check out this Nashville one. And yeah, you can see how much taller the storms are down here. There's a richer feed of moisture down here, more instability, and some really good lift. And you can get kind of right into these things. The spikes that you see within the system, where the reds and pinks, those are really high DBZ values. So very heavy rain and likely hail within that region. And we'll check that out here in a second. Okay, so turn on the view. Like I said, guys, this is mostly a test stream. We'll be doing more of this in the future. I got a pretty sweet studio getting set up here. All right, so this is a zoomed out view without the 3D, and you can see a lot of the storm systems are really in western Tennessee right now. It's heading towards Nashville. So there's going to be a pretty good line that wipes through Nashville probably within the next hour, hour and a half. It's going to get really close to that region. These storms are moving really fast. So 50, 60 miles an hour. This thing will be to Nashville by probably 11:30 midnight or so, around midnight. And really wind and hail is the main threat with that area. You can see Louisville up here, pretty messy. So I wouldn't expect tornadoes up here near Louisville. When you get these storms that are really, really messy and kind of merging together like that, that really lowers the tornado threat. You want isolated supercells. So if there's going to be any tornado threat, it's going to be storms on the southern end, like towards Memphis area, to the east of Memphis, where these storms are a little more isolated. But really, that does not look all that impressive, to be honest. This is turning into mostly a wind threat for this area. There could be still a couple of isolated embedded tornadoes as this thing moves into Louisville and west of there, but again, brief rain wrapped ones. There's storms up here are still isolated, so would not surprise me if you saw a brief tornado or two in northern Illinois still. You can see how these storms are much more isolated, but the issue is starting to get dark now. The instability is starting to weaken. So the cap will start to build, but you can see 3D radar here. The storm tops, not terribly tall. So you'd like to see them a little bit taller if you're looking for severe weather. Obviously, this is a good sign. This is moving to the north of northwest of Chicago towards Rockford, maybe impacting Minneapolis later. But I would suspect that these storms along this line will start to weaken as the cap builds in. And we're going to look at that here in a second. We'll go over to the browser view. Should be that. I'm going to look at the HRR real quick, and you can see kind of how the storms are going to evolve for the rest of the night across this region. And what's going on here is this is our cold front. You can see that this is the moisture. So those 60s, even close to 65 dews in this area is astronomical for this time of year. But this dry wedge of cold air is coming in, and that will start to shut down the tornado threat soon. You can see a nice warm front right here. So your best tornado threat still this evening is going to be kind of right in this region right here and to the northwest. So right within this region right here. What's going to happen here is this cold front and warm front intersection, this cold front's going to pinch off that warm front, so that moisture will get squeezed and pinched off. And what will happen is there'll be an occlusion behind it. So as that pinches off, the tornado threat will really start to lower for the northern Illinois and start to zip down. And as it does so, the tornado threat's going to decrease from north to south through the next few hours. And watch what will happen here. You can see that moisture starting to pinch off, and it doesn't quite get it to Chicago. Now, if it did, Chicago would be really under the gun. We'll still have to watch that area, but the moisture will be just to the south of Chicago. So that's really good news if you're in that area. But anywhere you see this plume of moisture, there's going to be some thunderstorms, some heavy rain, some hail, maybe even some wind too. So look at the composite reflectivity for the rest of the night, and you can kind of see this is pretty accurate right now. So this area really did underperform, which is good news for the northern part of Illinois. So that area really kind of busted. There was a couple of tornado reports, but my area out here that I was talking about in central and western Iowa yesterday on the video, I said there's going to be a nice surge of moisture and along that occlusion, and there'd be a temporary window for tornadoes. And some of the biggest tornadoes of the day were here in western Iowa. So it actually, I think there was one that did some damage, unfortunately, out in a field near a farmland. But this is 2Z, so this is around now, and it looks pretty accurate. You got a big complex of storms in Indiana. We'll track this into the rest of the night. So this is around 11 p.m. You can see those line of storms still hold. So there's still going to be a tornado threat out here in Iowa, or excuse me, Illinois and Wisconsin as it gets towards the Great Lakes. And like I said, I suspect the best chance for tornadic activity would be that southernmost area right here where that moisture, those 60 dews are reaching to the north. Tornado threat extremely low up here in Wisconsin, probably not enough moisture. And then obviously out here in Ohio, Indiana, down into Kentucky, it looks like a very messy mode. Typically when the storms are messy like they are right now, they don't go back to supercellular. So the tornado threat will at least maintain itself or decrease, usually won't increase throughout the night. So this is around 11 p.m. You can see a little more energy as we get towards 1 a.m. The low-level jet actually might start kicking in here very soon and deliver more rounds of precipitation here in Illinois, or Indiana into Ohio. Excuse me. So, yeah, and then we'll look at the SIN real quick. Again, guys, comment below if you have any questions. Share this with your friends. We're going to try to get a bunch of people on here. Eventually, we're going to do some contests, some live contests on here. I've got a new website set up for contests like we did a couple years ago, that fantasy chaser thing that I had going, Forecast Warrior. We got a brand new thing set up. So I'll eventually be doing some of that on these live streams. So Yeah, so we're going to look at the cap now. You see these areas in color. This is kind of where the cap is, and that really decreases the tornado threat. It kind of puts a lid on the energy. You can imagine a lid in the upper levels, holding down all the energy in the atmosphere, so it doesn't really let it escape much. But you can see that kind of builds, still pretty uncapped, but it starts to build a little bit as we get towards Ohio. So Ohio tornado threat pretty low overnight for the most part. Look at the significant tornado parameter, then we'll go look at the radar here again in a second. And yesterday, if you saw, the models were actually forecasting 10 or so within this region. Now it's only about 2 to 3. So that's really good news for parts of Illinois. But you can see that decreases throughout the night as we head towards early morning, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Really just falls apart. So not expecting tornadic activity within that region. We'll zoom down here up into the Ohio, Tennessee area, Ohio Valley, Tennessee. So this is about right now, but watch what happens as it moves to the east. So luckily for Nashville, you probably won't be seeing tornadic activity. You can actually see the cold front. So that's an indication of the cold front. So the significant tornado parameter indicates moisture and instability and wind shear overlapping each other. And when you get the cold front to move through, the cold front's bringing drier air. So that's why you see a decrease in values. And when you see a really sharp look like that, even with an elevated tornado risk right here, 9 times out of 10, from my experience forecasting severe weather and chasing, with really sharp cold fronts like that, it really undercuts the potential. So even if you have a tornadic environment out here, it's the cold front is moving really quickly and it really decreases the threat. It undercuts. So if there is a tornado, it's really fast and brief. So it really doesn't get its act together. You want to see if if you really get those strong tornadoes, you see significant tornado parameters elevated for several hours in the same area. But when they're elevated and they decrease really quick, that usually means you're not going to have a prolonged tornado threat. So pretty low in that area, but there'll still be a couple of isolated tornadoes here in Mississippi, Tennessee for the next couple of hours. All right, let's see if this application's working again. It's kind of glitching out. Like I said, I got this thing just today, so I'm going to be setting this up over the next couple of weeks and really customizing it so that it's a lot better for the channel. I also got another program that I'm working on. I'm making my own custom models for the channel, so stay tuned for that. And if you guys have any ideas, let me know. I can pretty much overlay anything you want in these new weather models. So that is going to be cool. So we're going to have like weather models and past tornado events that we can look at, and we can overlay them on top of each other. So it's going to be really cool for this channel. So it looks like the application's working in. So what we're going to do is look at some of these storms across Illinois. It looks a lot different for some reason. Let's see. Someone says, what are the chances of severe storms in about 2 hours north of Minneapolis? Let's go look at that real quick. Feel free to comment in the questions, or submit a question in the comments. So we'll switch to Minneapolis. Really, the threat is extremely low up in Minnesota. You see this right here. This is mostly widespread rain. What is that actually? Hold on. Just a couple of warnings here. See, I just got this software, so I'm not 100% sure what these colors, what they indicate. Storm direction, speed. So yeah, there's no way there's severe storms up there with this type of look. There's a lot of cold air up in Wisconsin, or Minnesota and Wisconsin, so I don't think that there's going to be any severe weather up there. But some heavy rain, some isolated embedded storms are possible up there, but nothing to worry about. The main threat will be what we were talking about with that moisture pinch that I was talking about, that moist axis, and that's really extending up into parts of Chicago, Illinois, and it really doesn't get farther north than about Rockford. So that is that. And you can see there's a severe storm warning now for this area up north of Rockford. Let's see if I can turn on the severe warnings here. Yeah, it's pretty, does not look like a tornado would be falling in that area. All right, I'm going to be back in a minute here. I'm going to try to get this set up here. All right, guys. So I think what that was just it was dying out. This actually is an old warning. This is a special weather statement. But anyway, this storm's moving to the northeast at 48 miles an hour. These things are racing. The hail size is about 0.75. Hail probability is about 50%. Do not suspect that there'd be anything crazy there. Yeah, the main show is going to be down here near Nashville. So the threat's really dying out way up north. Someone says, what are the chances of severe thunderstorm in northern Elgin? So Elgin, what state on that one? Someone says, look at Cleveland. So yeah, anything in Ohio, I don't suspect there'll be too much up here. The moisture is going to be pretty weak, and the capping is going to start to take over. But there'll be a couple storms that move through Cleveland later, but really not overall strong. Looks like there might be a tornado warning here. Yep. So that would be our only tornado warning. And you can see this is in Ohio or eastern Indiana. But boy, that doesn't look all that scary. So let's turn on, let's see here. Let's change the radar. Yeah, there's probably a little notch in there. And this is near Portland and Salmonella. But that said salmonella for a second. But yeah, so I don't think that there's not, I mean, I wouldn't worry about the strong tornado potential, but either way, you got to take shelter whenever you get a tornado warning. Most likely a rain wrapped week type of thing. All right, guys, hold on here a second. We're going to check out the velocity. Boy, that doesn't, yeah, really a weak tornado for that. I don't know what all these tracks are. Just downloaded this thing. I think what we're going to do is check out the other app. Once I get this thing customized, it should be a lot better. So we'll go over to yeah, that probably was an old warning because it's not currently on here at the moment. But the tornado threat's really low up in that area. What we're going to do is look at Nashville. A new storm system's kind of moving into Nashville. Like I said, around midnight, I think that area is going to get rocked with some storms. Probably not anything terribly strong. Okay, there we go. So you can see that these things are moving pretty fast. I mean, these things are moving at like interstate speeds at 60 miles an hour to the east. So right now there's a severe warning out for western Tennessee, for all of western Tennessee. If you look at the stats on this thing, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and you really aren't going to get tornadoes with these types of wind lines. Sometimes you'll get a brief rain wrap type of thing, and obviously you want to pay attention either way because it's severe weather and we got the ingredients. But I would suspect that the tornado threat is pretty low for the most part for Nashville. These SVC does have that area under a heightened risk for tornadoes, but I'm just not seeing it anymore. If there's any tornado threat, it'd be farther north here with this isolated storm near Hodgenville, but it's kind of losing its grip, but that'll be something to watch. It's out ahead of the main line. It's going to be dominating the moisture. But you can see that storm system behind Hodgeville is kind of connecting up with it. So when it becomes a line, the tornado threat really decreases. See this severe warning to the west of Nashville. It's got ineffective, expires at 11 p.m. Looks like hail greater than 75 or 0.75 inches, 60-mile-an-hour winds. Tornado possible. I'm just not seeing tornadoes with that, but we'll have to watch. I think okay, there we go. There's the tornado warning up here. So we'll switch to that view real quick. Yeah, that's near Portland, Red Key. So you can kind of see that notch kind of in there where you see it's near Fort Recovery. You can kind of see that lighter green. So there's inflow getting kind of sucked into this thing. And then near Red Key, there's a lot of outflow. So where those two kind of meet, that's where you're going to get your notch. That's probably why there's a tornado warning right in that area. Look at the base velocity real quick. So this is measuring the wind speeds going in and out of the radar. And we'll turn that on. And it's kind of glitching out there, but I would suspect some pretty strong winds out there. Differential reflectivity. Yeah, there could be something near Red Key. But for the most part, that's going to be hail. Now, let's see what this says. Yeah, radar indicated rotation. Doesn't say anything about hail. Either way, take shelter if you're in that area between Red Key, Green, Portland, and towards Fort Recovery. Even if you're near Fort Recovery and you see that you're not in the tornado warning, these things are racing so fast. Now I've been out chasing storms before, and I'm like 5, 10 miles away. I look at the map to see what street I have to go to, and by the time I look up, the tornado thing's right, like a block away from me. So these things move extremely fast. Either way, take shelter if you're in that region up there. And then there's a couple storms here down near Mississippi. So we'll turn on the Memphis radar. This is the 3D view. Like I said, guys, when the taller these storm systems are, typically the deeper the convection, the stronger the updraft, and the better chance for severe weather. And you can see this particular storm near Batesville got that big spike right there. So there's probably a big hail burst up there in Batesville. Everywhere else, it's really not all that tall. So that's going to be the main storm to watch over the next few minutes here. And there it is right there. So pretty impressive looking on the radar. This is moving towards Oxford. And with this type of look, you're getting some pretty good size hail. Now, looks like the hail threat's about 60-mile-an-hour winds, 65 miles-an-hour winds. And it does not say anything about hail damage to vehicles. About 1 inch hail is what it's saying. So, yeah, pretty crazy up there. Turn on the animation here. It's actually going to pass over a lake soon. So, I guess if you're near that lake, it might be kind of cool to see the hail splash into it. I got those crazy videos of like baseball size hail splashing into lakes on YouTube. All right, so that's going right over that lake. So looks like nothing, not overly over a heavily populated area. Should pass to the north of Oxford and in between Holly Springs. Another storm near Greenville. This does not look overly impressive, but my guess, based off the look of this, is just mostly wind. So we'll look at this real quick. Probably just 60-mile-an-hour winds. Yeah, hail is not going to be a threat with that. When you get the really low DBZ values, which are your colors in your radar, when they're below like 50 like that, it's mostly just and you see a severe warning, it's just usually a wind threat. So you're not going to get hail with anything like that. Same thing up here. When you get these big lines, looks like mostly just wind here towards Nashville. So I don't think that you're going to see anything too bad up in this region. As you get farther north, we'll check out that tornado warning again. What I'm going to do is go back to that other application. See if we can get this to work again. See, I turned something on here. What the heck? Go ahead and ask some questions, guys, in the comments. I'll just answer some questions as I try to figure out what's going on here with this software. All right, someone's asking about severe threats in Illinois. It's really going to decrease in this Illinois. I'd say that threats are near zero now. We'll look at Illinois real quick. So we're going to turn on Chicago's radar. The issue is the moisture is starting to decrease out here. It's kind of pinching off. The cap's starting to move in to this area. And for some reason, we're having some problems with the radar showing up. I'll have to figure that out for the next stream. Like I said, this is mostly a test stream, guys. But yeah, you can see these storms. There's no severe storms. It's really, for the most part, weakening. And we'll turn on a loop here. And you can see that tornadic storm that moved from about Burlington to Rockford. That was the main show for parts of Illinois. And you can see a local storm report. Stop that real quick. There was a storm report here a couple hours ago, around 9:13 p.m., of a tornado. And when I was looking at that before the live stream started, it did look like, at least from what I thought, it looked like it was on the ground. And it was a pretty strong couplet. And so we'll look at this area, kind of how it looks like in the terrain here. Looks like it passed the river just north of Oregon. And we'll turn on that loop. Kind of curious to see. So here's the storm earlier. This was the main one. It looked like Oregon may have just gotten, yeah, we'll have to watch that. It was just near and north of Oregon. And you can see that couplet. This was an hour ago. The little notch here is just to the south of Oregon. So I'll have to look at the damage reports to see. Hopefully that just missed them just by a hair, but that was really close to that city. Pretty good couplet there. But you can see that there's a local storm report of a tornado just to the northwest. And the populated area, if you can kind of see it, is just to the south of there. So hopefully that area got spared, but it probably crossed the river, and it wouldn't be surprised if there was a tornado in that area. But anyway, Illinois is not going to be seeing any more severe weather for the most part tonight. Like I said, if we go to the HRR, I'll show you what's going on here. This is why the tornado threat, this is right now. You can see the significant tornado parameter. Watch what happens over the next 2 hours. It just completely falls apart. And the reason for this is the instability. Earlier today, a lot of storms kind of moved through this area. And if they didn't move through that area, the sun would have heated up the surface longer, and there would have been a lot of instability. But the problem is the storms moved through and kind of scorched the atmosphere a little bit. So it dampened it out, and there just wasn't as much instability. And even right now, we just don't have a lot to work with, and it dies out really quick overnight. So instability is essentially the rise, the updraft speeds in the atmosphere. So when you get really warm air at the surface and cold air aloft, that warm air rises really rapidly when you get that temperature gradient. But if it starts to storm and storms too early, the rain cools down the warm air at the surface, and so you don't get as much rising. So that was the issue today in Illinois. So I would suspect that the tornado threat, severe threat, is extremely low. Even though you guys are under risk still, I just don't see it happening. And you can see the HR doesn't just forecast those storms to kind of really die out. But for the rest of the country here, for Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, there's definitely some storm systems that move through overnight. So it's going to mostly be a wind threat for you guys, the way it looks. Someone said Galesburg got significant damage. Yikes. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. Let's see how far back this thing goes. But you can definitely see what I was talking about in my video yesterday, that I thought that Iowa had a really good shot at these storm systems. I'll hold on here a second. There we go. And then obviously you guys can see those storms. Those pink areas are tornado warnings. Those really ripped through parts of East Iowa, and then obviously that storm in western Illinois moved through. But if that instability was there today, this storm would have been, in that storm formed in that environment, it would have been a pretty long track, violent tornado based off the dynamics we had. But luckily, the instability got scoured, so the tornado threat was a lot weaker in this region. But parts of Iowa did get a couple of tornadoes that produced damage, so still not, still wasn't just a walk in the park or anything. So you can see, guys, these red areas are severe warnings. Again, mostly wind, a couple areas of hail, especially where you see these isolated threat or isolated cells here in like Mississippi, parts of Nashville or west of Nashville. We'll zoom into that area real quick. Yeah, 4 confirmed in Iowa. Yep. So I made a prediction. I said there'd be at least 12 tornadoes yesterday in the video. So we'll see how that did real quick. This is SPC. You can actually check out the current tornado threat. So there's 13. So literally right there. So you can see most of the tornadoes here in Iowa. There was a little outbreak here in eastern parts of Arkansas earlier in the day. And that was kind of when I was trying to get this live stream working. So I didn't really get this up in time, but you can see that kind of follows that cold front, warm front intersection. But a lot of the tornadoes formed near that occlusion. So you get you get a cold front, you get a warm front, and when they zip together, you get this occluded front, and that's kind of where they formed. And it definitely looked like there was a decent environment for an hour or two within that region. So definitely verified in Iowa, verified out here in parts of Arkansas, and obviously northwest Illinois. That was my target area. It verified, but not quite as strong as I thought it would be. But let's see. So yeah, so it's really going to die out here for the rest of the night in Illinois. There's a tornado warning still here out in parts of Indiana. So this is eastern Indiana. Radar detected. So what your guys are looking at here is this notch. You see that where that green kind of hooks into the reds? There's probably some inflow getting sucked into that area. So we'll go ahead and turn on the radar for that region real quick and see if we can find something. Turn on Indianapolis here. Illinois' production says those tornado watches for Northeast Illinois need to expire. I agree. I think the threats for the most part is pretty much zero. If there is going to be any threat, it's going to be out between Rockford and Kenosha and Milwaukee. You could see an isolated rogue severe storm warning, maybe even a brief tornado still up in there, but I would say the chances of that are about 10% the way it looks. All right, so the tornado warning, it expires at 10:30 p.m., so within 6 minutes from now. We'll see if they're going to reissue this. Let's look at the radar real quick here. The base velocity. So I just got this software, so I'm actually learning how to use it live here. Let's see. Wait for that to load. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to that other radar here in a second. We'll look at this one real quick. I'm going to fix that software overnight and kind of customize it so that it is really good for the channel for the next live stream that we do. And I also got some other new software that we're going to be unveiling here soon. But yeah, there's the tornado warning. Expires in 6 minutes, and there's the velocity. So there's actually some errors in the radar. So I can't really do anything about that. That's actually the radar. But you can see that velocity couple. You see the greens and the reds kind of submerged together there. and that's where you would get some rotation. But for the most part, that's you see how broad it is and how weak it is. It's really not that strong. So I would suspect that this tornado warning will expire and there won't be a new one issued. Either way, take shelter if you're in that area towards to the west of Fort Recovery. To the east of there, there's actually a severe warning, and it looks like it's going to just mostly be wind and hail within that region. So nothing too bad within that region. But yeah, these storms are starting to finally die out. Look at the Nashville one real quick. If you guys are wondering what app this is called Weather Lab. You actually only can get it for iPad and iPhone and Android devices, but it is a sweet app. All right, there we go. Ooh, so we got a tornado warning now here just to the west of Nashville. So this is gonna be something to watch here. It's actually pointing right towards Nashville. This literally was just issued. And like I said, with these wind lines, you usually just get severe weather, but sometimes if you can get some wrapping, you'll get these little notches, and you can see that right there. So just to the east of New Johnsonville, you see that little notch, that little V shape? That means there's usually inflow getting sucked into it, and then there's outflow coming out of New Johnsonville where that red is. So what that means is you got outflow moving towards the southeast and inflow moving towards the northwest. So you get this little circulation. Now, typically with wind lines, you don't get strong, long track tornadoes. They're typically weak and brief, but there have been strong tornadoes before. So either way, take shelter in that region. This is just going to pass near Waverly. Now, when you get tornado warnings, sometimes they will start to bend towards the east a little bit more than other storms. So my guess is that would pass to the south of Waverly. Either way, that is very close. So we'll look at the velocity here, and you see that little red splatter right there in the middle. That would be where your couplet is, or just to the north of that. So your circulation is going to be just to the east of New Johnsonville. But right now, it does not look like anything terribly strong within that region. Not, I wouldn't say a strong tornado or anything's falling in that. Looks probably just mostly radar indicated. You can see these 3D radar here. They've got some pretty tall storm systems. When you get taller systems, you got a stronger updraft, stronger precipitation when you get those redder colors. So the height, these are the heights we're looking at. So the heights, if they're really tall, you got stronger updrafts, and that usually often, if the environment is right, that does increase tornado potential. Just, well, it indicates that the tornado potential is there. Pretty strong storms near Bowling Green as well. I'm going to see if I can get that to load on the other software. While that loads, I'm going to play an animation for you guys. Also, comment below if you have any questions. We're going to try to get this other software to work. But that is very concerning because that is just to the east of Nashville. Like I said, if you guys are interested in this, you can get this at Weather Lab. It's a weather app. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to switch over. And there it is. So we're looking at the area just to the east of Waverly. This is our only tornado warning right now, so we'll focus on this. This goes to 11 p.m., so this is a half hour out. It's moving to the northeast at 58 miles an hour. So this thing will be to Nashville within like an hour or so. So, I mean, and it's like almost a highway speed. Pretty incredible. Hail size, less than 0.75 inches. Yeah, when you get these lines, you're not going to get large hail typically. If you do, it's the smaller stuff. But this main threat here is going to be wind with potentially some isolated tornado activity within that region. Look at the base velocity here. And I don't see anything terribly concerning. There might be a little bit of rotation. Storm relative velocity. Yeah, there we go. Storm relative velocity. Kind of near, just to the south of Waverly, there's a little bit of a couplet. Wouldn't surprise me to, yeah, on the backside near Waverly, you see that little notch moving in. There's also a little bit of a notch near McEwen. Oh, there, is that a new tornado warning? Let's see. I think that's a new track, but yeah, there's a little bit of a notch near McEwen. There's another one near Sladen. So those are another couple other areas that you could see some brief spin ups. So we'd have to be careful with those areas if you live in those areas. Look at the base velocity right here. Oops, the storm relative velocity. So near Sladen, you can kind of see a little bit of a notch starting to form. So now the radar is actually indicating that a tornado is possible. So would not be surprised to see a tornado warning issued for that area. Clarksville is another area where there's a little bit of a notch that has the potential for a notch. Not really quite yet, but you can see a little bit of some circulation right there in the radar. So that's something to watch for. This area right here is what we're really looking at. Nothing terribly strong yet, but just to the southeast of McEwen, there very well could be some tornadic activity. This is not a spotter confirmed tornado. This is a radar indicated, so that's good news. It's moving northeast again at 58 miles an hour, expires at 11 p.m. Pretty incredible speeds there. But that's the Dixie Alley. That's, it's like Dixie Alley type of events. Tennessee area. Now, this thing is a pretty widespread system. So, but yeah, you can see Nashville here is right to the east of this. So this is something to watch. With tornadic storms, if they really get cranking, something I've noticed was chasing and stuff is they will bend to the east a little bit. So they'll right turn, essentially meaning they'll go from the northeast and then they'll switch to the east if they really get going. Luckily, with wind lines, you're not going to typically see that. But if you did, that would put Nashville really under the gun. But the current track is to move this just to the northern side of Nashville. Either way, Nashville is a pretty big city, so we're going to have to watch this. But like I said, guys, these things along the lines are usually brief, short-lived. They're not really, I wouldn't suspect that this would make it all the way out here. And if it did, it would be somewhere else. Like there'd be a new circulation that would pop up towards Clarksville or somewhere farther south. They kind of are nebulous. They kind of blip in and out with these lines. And now if it was a supercell, we'd be live streaming for hours. But luckily, that's not the case. All right, so we'll put the animation on here. Yeah, a little bit of rotation in there, but nothing too bad. This area near Clarksville is definitely something I'm keeping my eye on. It's a little bit of a notch there as well. That's going right through the city. So even if there's not a tornado warning there, I would say take cover in that area. Or just, at least be weather aware. Yeah, that's going right through that Clarksville area. All right, someone said, how about the Cincinnati area? Cincinnati looks pretty good. Or yeah, pretty good meaning not any storms for the most part, except for this one right here. But I'm talking about tornadoes is what I meant by that. We'll switch on this area real quick, and we'll look at the Cincinnati area. But like I said, I just don't think there's going to be tornadoes in that region right there. But we could see some strong winds. I'm going to turn on a radar, and we're going to switch to Cincinnati here. Wait for that to load. It takes a few minutes, and there we go, finally. Okay, so here's your Cincinnati storm, and you see how it's really widespread like that. You see it's just a big blob. And so tornado threats typically are weak if there is going to be any tornado threat, but your severe warning is to the east, and there is a thunderstorm warning. This is moving towards Cincinnati. 58 miles an hour, hail size is less than a quarter, or less than 0.75 inches, winds at 60 miles an hour. I really don't think you're going to get hail with this system. Cincinnati, I would expect Some gusty winds, 30 to 60 mile an hours criteria, and that will start to happen really any minute now through about midnight, 11:30 midnight. So this complex that moves through, you're going to get really heavy rain, but you're going to get this blustery wind with it. This is kind of an MCS now, and sometimes they'll get even wind on the backside. Usually with storms, you'll get wind on the front side when you get these lines, but when they turn into these MCSs, sometimes you could get kind of gusty winds throughout the duration of the event. So over the next couple of hours, it could be blustery in Cincinnati, but mostly just heavy rain, gusty winds, and some decent thunder, some lightning within that region. All right, someone says no storms in Kentucky. Well, there are a couple storms right now. We can definitely look at those though. So Bowling Green's actually getting hit right now pretty bad. Yeah, Kentucky's really not going to see anything terribly crazy, but you can see Bowling Green here. It's a pretty nasty storm moving through that area. There's actually a little bit of a hook, but turn on that real quick. See if there's any tornado potential with that. Yeah, there's a little bit of a hook here near Bowling Green. There's not a tornado warning by any means at the moment. It says there's a severe thunderstorm warning moving to the northeast at 51 miles an hour. Hail size of 1 inch. So this is actually a storm that I would suspect there'd be a higher risk for hail. So that stuff in Cincinnati, definitely not the case, but this storm is more isolated. It's got higher DBZ values. You see how the gradient's tighter. When you get that type of look, and you get this little notch right here, you can get some really large hail. So I would suspect that you'd see some golf balls moving through Bowling Green here soon. And you can see the animation. Yeah, that's going right through Bowling Green or just to the north of that area. Probably a burst of heavy rain and winds as well. Let's see what kind of population. Yeah, it might just pass to the north, guys, but nonetheless, say park your car in the garage if you're within that region, even to the north of Smith's Grove. It's a pretty nasty looking little hail core there. Let's go look at that on the 3D radar. So I would suspect something like that would be a lot taller on the 3D radar. Yeah, this is that storm we're looking at. You can see on Bowling Green, you can see those taller storms. They're kind of spiking up like that. So that means the updraft's really strong. There's a lot of hail in those cores. Yeah, it might be one of the highest storms here. And obviously that tornado warning out there towards Dickerson, it's got some pretty tall tops. So this has definitely got a look near Bowling Green of some pretty decent hail. But as you can see, the last frame there, it did weaken just a bit. So that's good news. Oops. So we'll go back to WSV3 here. But yeah, there's definitely a notch within that region. So we'll have to watch that. You can see this green and red. See how that green and red's kind of close together? There's a couple of notches within the system. There's one just to the southwest of Bowling Green and then one farther south. But yeah, the area I'm concerned about here is that where you see this little right angle. For the most part, I wouldn't say that's going to be any tornadoes with that type of look. Typically, you want it curled around a little bit tighter. The way this looks is there's probably just a strong little burst of RFD, of strong winds here. And it's probably going to be pretty cold and flat. So I wouldn't suspect any tornado threat, but if there's going to be a tornado that develops, it's going to be in that little V notch area right there, just to the east or just to the west of Bowling Green. What I'm going to do is go back down to this tornadic storm down here near Dixon. Let's see. Feel free to ask some questions in the comments, guys. About time for bed here soon in a second. All right, so tornado warning still moving to the northeast at 51 miles an hour. Actually, it was 58 miles an hour, so it's slowed a bit, which is good. But still, that is just pretty racing speeds. Someone said Ohio about 50,000 times. Yeah, Ohio is mostly going to be a wind and rain threat. So what you're going to get in Ohio is blustery winds for a few hours, just heavy rain and some lightning. You'll probably get that cloud to cloud lightning. So the crawlers that you get, the stuff that kind of crawls across the sky, you'll get some of that up in that area. You typically get those with MCSs, those big blobs of rain. Looks like the tornado threat decreased. So they dropped the tornado threat for Dickerson. It really doesn't look impressive anymore. So that's good news. See if I can switch radars here. There are some severe storms still heading towards Nashville. It still looks pretty nasty. So you can see that couplet is kind of gone now, and it's more of a point. It's kind of a pointy look to it. So it's kind of bowing out just a bit there. It's probably just going to be a heavy little batch of rain and wind. And let's see, details, 58 miles an hour. Hail probability 70%. I would say that's, yeah, that looks pretty nasty right there. So even though the wind threat's the highest, there is going to be some hail mixed in there. And it's probably going to be peat and nickel size. Usually when you get bow echoes or little lines like that. Let's turn on that probe. So that's values of 60 dBz nearly. So there's some pretty nasty, it's going to get really nasty in that area near Dixon. But luckily the tornado threat looks to be a lot lower with this type of look. There's a little bit of a couplet there, but you can see the gate-to-gate shear, or the shear is really weak, 10 to 15 knots. So that's really just not tornado potential. It's broad. You're not really going to get tornadoes with that, so I'm not too concerned about that. So really within this area, it's just going to be heavy rain, wind, hail for the most part. We'll look at some other stuff for fun here. Echo tops. So the echo tops are how high the storms get, and we use that 3D radar for the most part for this stuff, but you can also view them here, and you can see 30,000 feet or so, 40,000. Downdraft gust potential. So wind speeds, this is kind of measuring the downdraft gusts. So you could get some gusts in that 60-mile-an-hour range near Dickerson or Dixon. Van Leer, 50, 60 miles an hour. So near borderline severe criteria within that region. That is all moving towards Nashville. And the way this looks, if you were to kind of average it out, it does look like Nashville will get some storms here within the next, set around midnight, maybe 12:30. But there's a little bit of a break here. So that might be, Nashville might actually end up in between, but it'll probably change. This stuff will probably line out and kind of fill in. I would suspect Nashville, early morning hours to get 50-mile-an-hour winds or so, 30 to 60-mile-an-hour winds with this type of event. Some heavy rain, maybe some isolated hail within that. Tornado threat pretty low. There's a pretty impressive looking system here near Savannah. This is southernmost part of Tennessee. This is something you got to watch. When you get the farthest south storm, and when they're isolated like that, sometimes they can produce tornadoes. We'll turn off that loop. So I'm going to turn on the radar in that area. It might have just been, yeah, wow, that's pretty impressive there. So you got DBZ values of 65, 66. There's probably some massive hail or at least some pea-size hail that is going to be interacting in that area. And you can see there's a severe warning out now. All right. Wow, that is pretty crazy. So 61 dBz moving northeast at 53 miles an hour. Hail probably 100%. I'd agree on that. Anytime you see something like that, it's definitely hail. Severe hail probability. So severe hail is an inch or more, and that's 60%. So there's definitely hail in here, and size indicated is 1.25 inch. Even if it's like 1.25 inch, you're talking probably somewhere between ping pong and tennis, golf ball size hail most likely. Even if it's just that size, you can get tons of hail that falls. So there's two different ways to measure this. When you see these high dBz values, it could be really large hail chunks, or it also could be really high rates of hail falling. Sometimes you get isolated hail, and sometimes you get pouring in buckets. I would think with this type of look, you're going to get buckets of hail. When you get these little U-shaped supercells, when they kind of have that bow look to them, they're elevated supercells with tons of hail that falls really rapidly in a short period of time. It can cause severe flooding and ice jams and stuff in the roads. Had a few of those go through before, and those are just insane. That's what it looks like. Moving towards Waynesboro. These things can last a really long time too. So would not be surprised to see this track pretty far to the west, to the east. Yeah, that's pretty nasty looking. What I'm gonna do is look at the Ville. I believe that's Ville density. Let's see. Go to level 3 here and look at the Ville. Oh, because I don't have it there. So I'll definitely be looking at this in the future, guys. Kind of still learning the software, but either way, that storm is going to be producing golf ball size hail for sure, and a lot of it. So if you're a contractor in that area, you're any of these cities, Boonville, probably Boonville is going to be the most likely area that gets hit by that thing. There's going to be some pretty nasty hail in the farthest northeast part of Mississippi. So it'd be cool to look at that storm report tomorrow. Someone says, what program am I using? WSV3, pretty sweet program. I'm actually creating my own software that we're going to be including on the channel here. That includes model data, radar, all sorts of stuff. So you'll be seeing that rolling out soon in my forecast videos. So stay tuned for that. And we also got some other cool things coming up on the channel. All right, someone says Nashville area. Yeah, Nashville will get hit by some pretty good storms within a couple hours. Mostly going to be gusty winds. And I would suspect a good burst of winds. And probably we'll turn on the radar for everyone here. Yeah, Nashville will get a good burst of winds and probably not a lot of hail when you get these lines like this. You're going to get some good lightning, but it's going to be very fast. I mean, we're talking storm speeds of 60 miles an hour and a really thin line of storms. It's probably going to be a half hour of just wind and heavy rain, and then it'll be done after that. Biggest hail threat is going to be that storm in the southernmost part of Tennessee, now just crossing the border. Other than that, the hail threat's pretty low for everyone else. And then the area up here in Columbus, Ohio, just to the east of Columbus and now in Cincinnati, is mostly just going to be blustery winds and, for the most part, really heavy rain. But for the most part, it's just going to be a long duration period of wind and rain and some isolated embedded thunder as well. You're going to get that like cloud to cloud crawling lightning up here within this area. So that really cool lightning that crawls across the sky, you typically get that with MCSs. And then obviously, the parts of Illinois into Wisconsin, these storms are starting to die out up here. The instability is starting to weaken. The cooler, drier air is going to start moving in. So these storms will really weaken. So don't worry about that out there. Going to just be isolated thunderstorms for Chicago. The environment got squandered within this area earlier in the day. So before we wrap it up here, guys, I'm starting to lose my voice. About time for bed. What we're going to do is look at the HR for the rest of the night, and I'll show you guys kind of how things are going to evolve here. But like I said, guys, we're going to start live streaming more and a lot earlier. Today was mostly a test run, still setting up the studio, so it's pretty rushed. So really only on here for about an hour, but normally I would start like at 4 o'clock or something when these things really get going. But here's the mixed layer instability. So this is the updraft potential in the atmosphere, the buoyancy. This is right around right now, and you can see that instability is really dropping off in Illinois. There's still a little bit of instability in Kentucky and obviously Mississippi. Your best hail threat is going to be down here in Mississippi if you do get any in the southern part of Tennessee. As we head towards 1 a.m., this really starts to weaken. So the threat for severe weather will still be somewhat significant down here in this region, Mississippi, parts of Alabama, into Tennessee, but isolated in nature farther north. There's really not a whole lot of instability. What we can do is look at most unstable Cape. So most unstable Cape looks at the most unstable layer of the atmosphere. And if you get like large values of that, you still can get elevated activity. And definitely see that here in parts of Indiana and Ohio around 1 a.m. So there'll be a couple of isolated severe storms within this region, but really going to die out after that. So I think I'm going to wrap it up, guys, for tonight. Again, this was a test run. We're going to have a lot more new software, new custom stuff, and I'm also getting a huge new social media and forecasting contest website up for you guys. I'm building that. That's kind of where I've been the past month. Custom to this channel, completely custom social media channel. So stay tuned for that, guys. It's gonna be sweet. And be able to create your own weather profiles and do weather contests. We'll have weather forecasts. We'll have other people on it. It's gonna be sweet. So stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you soon.